Stinger, and I will be talking about the brief history of Hurricane Harvey. In the video below, it shows the effects of the hurricane, including damages and, more significantly, the flooding. Harvey's torrential rain, devastating winds, and widespread flooding have so far costed 77 lives. Not only that, it has driven over 1 million people to evacuate their homes in Texas alone. It has caused extensive destruction that will likely make it one of the most costliest storms in U.S. history. It was said that 51.88 inches of rain were recorded under 5 days in the outskirts of Houston. This hurricane was considered Category 4 with the wind speed of 130 to 156 miles per hour. And it has affected not only Texas, but Louisiana, Belize, Nicaragua, and Honduras.
It is easy for us Michiganders to feel very far away from the recent natural disasters if we do not have any family or direct connection with those living down south. The news and pictures that circulate in media seem like the only proof, since many of us are not navigating in the challenging situations that many of our fellow citizens are experiencing. We chose to present specifically on Hurricane Harvey and social injustice issues that arrive with horrifying disasters, but also many of the concepts that we are discussing can be applied beyond Hurricane Harvey. I chose to add these 3 pictures in the slide because these were the first pictures that came up when I Google searched Hurricane Harvey. Later on in this presentation, another classmate will be talking about how our media plays a role in how we perceive the issues that are occurring in Texas, but I found it particularly interesting that all the pictures have black or brown individuals. If the first 3 images on Google are showing our minority population being rescued from Hurricane Harvey, then where are all the whites? Are the whites victims? I found an article in The Root, which is an online magazine geared towards a black audience that is published by the Washington Post. The author of the articles is Charles D. Ellison, who was formerly a congressional staffer and speechwriter, but is now a respected political analyst. All this being said, the article probably contains some bias, but there are many important points that Ellison writes about. He mentions the importance of access to transportation. Hurricane Harvey was a slow-moving storm, and the nation knew about the hurricane before it arrived. But regardless, evacuation takes money and transportation access. If we have learned anything in this class, it is that our skin color largely affects our income, and our income largely affects our life. Specifically relating to the class material, a couple of weeks ago we learned about the challenges of transportation when we watched 30 Days. The stars, Morgan and Alex, were solely relying on public transportation to get between their jobs and home. If we apply individuals who are working on a minimum wage income and living without a car, then how are they evacuating from a natural disaster such as Hurricane Harvey? On the screen is a quote from Ellison's article. And so even if these individuals have cars to evacuate, do they have the savings that will help them afford to leave? This is truly a race and socioeconomic issue. The authors Gertzel and Sarskin of The Colors of Family Ties, Race, Class, Gender, and Extended Family Involvement wrote about how race affects our family life. I think this article can simply be tied into access to transportation and evacuation of Hurricane Harvey. Gertzel and Skanskin wrote that 42% of blacks and 37% of Latinos live with extended family. This is important because if we can roughly apply these statistics to those suffering from Hurricane Harvey, then these individuals do not have the ability to leave the danger and maybe go stay with their family members, their extended family members living elsewhere in the country. Gertzel and Sanskin also write that white men are more likely to send financial help to extended family when needed. If those of color are sitting in this position, then statistically speaking, they are less likely to have extended family members that will be sending financial support. So who ends up stuck with no access to flee from a disaster? Those of low socioeconomic class, minorities, the oppressed, and so on. Our group has learned that the transportation aspect of Hurricane Harvey is not black and white. It is a very gray situation that our government continues to be faced with. We saw something similar to this 12 years ago during Hurricane Katrina. Did we learn from the racial injustice then? In the future, could we benefit from public transportation that could offer transportation assistance and housing out of the hurricane pathway days before the storm hits? Could that help with the racial disparities that we experience during national disasters? These discussions around race and disaster need to continue, and we can start those on an individual level, hopefully to implement transportation policy as these conversations progress, but also hopefully to start conversations about the many ways natural disasters challenge racial disparities, such as those through media, disease, damage, and that occur with these devastating events, such as Hurricane Harvey.
Hurricanes don't care if you're rich, poor, white, or black, but that doesn't mean that every person is equally susceptible to a storm. Low-income families are more likely to live in flood-prone areas with poor infrastructure. Oftentimes, low-income communities and communities of color don't get the necessary protection when it comes to flood control, said Robert Bullard, a professor of urban planning and environmental policy. Houston is a southern city. Generally, the way that the city has grown and the way that the housing and residential patterns have emerged have often been along race and class lines. Discriminatory housing policies have restricted and confined poor people and people of color to less desirable areas when it comes to flooding and other kinds of land uses. The infrastructure in wealthier communities usually comes with the bicycle lanes and jogging trails that keep floodwaters more controlled. Low-income communities tend to lack these features. Low-income areas do not have sidewalks or drainage systems, which in return result in overflooding ditches that run into their homes. The city's poorest residents are also more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants, which result in massive pollution. Disease and illness are a result of living near these areas. If you don't have insurance, this makes it even harder to get back on your feet. The Katrina response was not an isolated incident. We like to say that some communities don't have the complexion for protection. I hope Houston is not one of those.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Lee. Today I'll be talking about media and natural disasters. In Module 3, we discussed how media shapes our views of society. In our book, Rereading America, writer Diana Kendall states that in a mass media culture such as ours, the media do not simply mirror society, rather they help shape it and create cultural perceptions. For example, when I looked up the word looting on Google Images, the first row of pictures were all colored people. It says that a widely used photo caption that described a black man as looting and a seemingly comparable white couple as finding food shines light on the idea that media really does shape and create cultural perceptions, or in other words, stereotypes. After doing some more research, I found a study that did support the idea that media does affect how we view survivors and victims of Hurricane Harvey and other natural disasters. The study looked at how media coverage during a natural disaster that featured all races would affect how an audience might respond to donating to relief funds. Results show that African Americans, Asians, and Hispanics are less likely to get assistance from participants, who are mostly white. But tan white folks were more likely to get assistance from participants because they were found to be more attractive.
We can make a difference to help the hurricane victims by donating as much as we can. Donations can be anything from blood to money, food, or clothes. We should all make donations to the hurricane victims, regardless of their race or social class, because they're part of our country and we need to help one another.